the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 46. You know what this means? It means that we are officially 4 episodes from reaching the official 50 episodes. We recently reached 2 milestones this week where we had officially released 50 episodes. These included those little snippets of the Be Heard campaign, but we're still going to continue until we're 50. We have a special surprise for you on that 50th episode, so please do tune in. I am so excited. Also, thank you so much. We reached over 3,500 podcast downloads this week alone, and it's just a joy. Thank you so much for listening to me all these times. Now let's get into today's episode. My guest today is Silindokuhle Mavuso, who is from South Africa. In this episode, we learned that Silindokuhle, or Silindo, has a vast musical background. However, he also has an aptitude for science, and as a result, he picked the latter to pursue further. He takes us through the journey of him getting into the field of geology and archeology. Currently, Silindo is a PhD candidate at the School of Geoscience at the University of Witwatersrand, South Africa. He's focusing on identifying and explaining past environments that are associated with early human life and advancement through time in the caves of Kenya. He tells us more about this work and the importance. Further, we discuss his role as a project manager of the National Geographic Umsuka public Paleoanthropology project that aims to bring research conducted by the project to educate people about human evolution. Lastly, we discuss with him how he has navigated in this field, which is predominantly white, and how this has affected the type of researcher that he is now. So tune in to find out about all of this and so much more. Let's go. Hi, Silindo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you. I know we had a little bit of, issues, but I'm glad that, all of that worked out and we get to have this interview.
The ghetto.
Yeah, no, it's calm and load shedding. It's an issue. But, just to kick things off, can you just tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, where you're based, and what are you currently doing?
So I am from originally, I live in Johannesburg now, which is, Joburg is a great place, greatest city in Africa, in my opinion. But I am originally from a small town in KwaZulu-Natal, KZN, called Newcastle. Born and bred there. I did my undergrad at the University of Cape Town, and then I moved to the biggest city, to Joburg. Currently a PhD candidate at the School of Geosciences, which is at the University of the Witwatersrand in Braamfontein. And I'm currently working on my PhD project. This is kind of like the last stretch of my PhD project. I'm writing up, trying to figure things out with COVID. So and I've been in Johannesburg for about 6 years now, I think.
Awesome. So before we get into everything that you do, away from the sciences, right, you're quite musical. You're not only a scientist, you're quite musical. So you play the violin, you used to be in a choir. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so up until essentially 3 years ago, I had been in a chorus dialogue, a choir boy, since I was in second grade, like in grade 2. So I've always just had an aptitude for music. I think there's so many parallels between music and science. There's always patterns. There's always this kind of, basically it's such a very familiar aptitude to me, pursuing science and also doing music. So I was a violinist for most of high school. I started in grade 7, I remember at ages of 12 up until matric. And then I did choir. I've been in I've been in the school choir. I've been in the provincial choir. I've sang nationally, internationally for both choirs represented. I've been in university choirs. I've actually also composed some music in some of the university choirs that I've been part of. It's just been one of very interesting aptitudes for me in my life that kind of keeps me sane, and it's just also relaxing and fun. So just a little side hobby of mine that I still pursue. Yeah, and I also like recently took up guitar, and that's been fun to try and figure out. And I play the drums as well. So yeah, just trying to explore all types of music.
That's so fantastic. A man of many talents. So just a quick little interjection. You said that you've been musical basically for most of your life. How, like, didn't you want to pursue that further? Like study music? How then do you end up doing science?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I really didn't have a formula of what I wanted to do at a young age when I was doing this. I was like, I really like this and I enjoy it. So let's see where it takes me. And music, I did consider it, but I was like, it's nice, but there's people that are way more talented. I'm also like a scientist, so my brain is incredibly practical. So I'm like, I was like, yeah, I'm good at what I do. I'm good at music, but there's people that's so much more talented than I am, like objectively. So I might as well, like, I'll be fine, but like, I prefer to do something that I know that I'm just as like, incredibly good at. And I just did kind of like cost benefit analysis on almost everything I can do in high school, and I figured the sciences is probably where my strength lies the strongest.
Dare I say that you pursued science because it was more, inverted commas, stable, and being an African Black child, like there's always that thing that, the arts is more like, are you sure? And the science is more like, yes, this is definite.
I think there was definitely an element of that. I think there was an element of that, but I was lucky enough to have parents who were like, no, you need to do whatever you want to do because, like, we don't want to be blamed for your, misfortunes. It's a joke that we have at home that, like, our parents were like, yeah, do whatever you need to do, but make sure that it makes you money at some point. But I think obviously that cost benefit image, I did think of it. Like, I could have pursued music if I wanted to, but I just honestly did not feel like it is where I could contribute to basically society or humanity as much as I could when I was doing science. I think I have an aptitude for music, and I think I have an aptitude for science. I just think my aptitude for science is a lot stronger. It's a lot more clearer. It's a lot more easy. It's a lot more and it's a lot more enjoyable for me, like the process of me. I love music and everything, but just for me, it really might have subconsciously been a decision, but not really when I was going through the process. I was like, okay, this is what I like. This is what I can do better more. This is what I like more, or a lot more. And I always have seen music as a hobby anyway, which is also maybe the African Black child in me. But I was like, oh yeah, I enjoy this. I can always do this. It's cool. But I can also get another skill in, like, I don't know, the sciences, that's more useful.
Yeah. No, that's a valid point. So speaking of the sciences, the route that you decided to choose, how then do you get into, like, take us through rather, how you get into this field of geoscience? I'm actually only realizing that this is something now because what's happening on Twitter with Black and insert whatever topic they are doing this week. So how did you even get exposed to that? Can you take us through your journey, especially from like undergrad all the way up until your PhD?
Yeah, I've had a really strange journey because it might seem like it's like, if you look at my resume, you'd be like, oh, this is so intentional. He knew what he wanted to do and whatever or not. And to be honest, like I had quite a few aha moments. So I'm probably not like, I probably just went with my gut mostly, which is something that I should probably tell people not to do. I was in first year and I knew I was doing a BSc, and I was like, you know what? I really enjoyed geography in high school. So let me do something geography and geology related. So the intro course at UCT in the earth sciences is geography, geology, and archeology. So I was like, I didn't declare geology and geography as majors because I was like, I'm good at this. And geology specifically in first year, I was kind of overwhelmed. So I wasn't really sure if I want to do this. I was like, ooh, this is a bit too much. But I always had geography to fall back on. And I really enjoy geography, but I was like, I don't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. And then part of the intro course also had archaeology, and I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And then in second year, I had to choose an elective to just fill in my two majors. And I was like, I'm just going to do archaeology. Everyone says archaeology is interesting and it's nice, but it's not invasive, so it's not hard. And to be honest, like, I was mind blown at everything. The first course I did was called Hunters and Herders, so about the Khoisan people, basically that they kind of like life and prehistory. I thought that was interesting. The second course I did was human evolution, introduction to human evolution, and my mind was blown. And my mind was specifically blown because I was like, everything is like in our backyard. Like, all you need to study about human evolution is right here. Like, what the hell? Like, no one told me, and I felt so upset that no one told me, like, how everything is just right at our disposal, you know? And I could see how, like, the study of human evolution was so parallel to everything I loved about biology, and I was always been fascinated by biology. And I declared archaeology as a major then because, like, I could just take up another major. It's so easy. I had done the higher level courses first, so I'd be like the junior level courses. So it wouldn't be like in my final year, basically, it would be such a non-invasive course. It'd be like a relaxing course. And then in third year, I got the chance. I got a fellowship to go to Kenya, and this is after I just had like the most intense geology, like kind of like semester, the hardest semester of geology, and I'd finished my geography major, and I had one course for geology and archaeology left, and just before I went, I had this intense geology major course, and they taught you basically everything, and then I went on this field trip to Kenya, and it was so incredible because it was such a brilliant bridge between my geology and my archaeology. So how geologists work with archaeologists in the field, and I was like right there witnessing it, and at that moment, I kind of like, this is what I need to do. This is what I love. This is what I'm really good at, and this is what I need to do for the rest of my life. And then obviously I went into honors, got into honors at UCT
actually.
I was not gonna do the honors in geology because I was like, I can still get the same research out of it. So I was gonna do an honors in archaeology. And then got a phone call like 2 weeks into honors, be like, hey, listen, you got into a program at Wits, a dual honors program at Wits for geology and paleontology. And I was like, that's literally what I want to do. Like, I was making it work at UCT, but Wits has everything tailored. I spoke to a few people at UCT who had been at Wits, and everyone was like, you have to go there. Like, I went there. It was one of the most like best life exchanging experiences of my life. I learned so much in 1 year, just not only about the most recent human past, but ancient like evolution. So I learned about the evolution of mammals. I learned about the evolution of life, like the first cyanobacteria, photosynthesizing plants in the world. I learned about plants around Africa. I learned about, like, my eyes were just open to something that I thought could not be opened. And like, ever since I've had that kind of experience between being at UC and Wits and about like the evolution of life, and the fact that it's like right here, like I'm always just baffled at how little people know about the research that you could do from your house, in South Africa. It's ridiculous. So ridiculous. And then pursued an honors degree. And then in master's, I decided I wanted to work on the Paleoanthrology, so in caves. So I worked in Stockfontein in caves. And then one of my friends, who I saw in a conference when I was abroad, she's like, I really enjoyed you when you were a student with us in Cool before. She's American. She's like, could you please come out to the field and just be my geologist? Just very simple stratigraphy work. I just need a geologist on site. Could you please come? I was like, yeah, sure, I'll just come check it out. I haven't been there in a while anyway. It'd be a nice holiday anyway. So yeah, I went there, and this was me like on my master's year, just about to complete my master's year. I went there and I was like so excited, and this was like so cool. I was like, at the end of that trip, I was like, I have to do my PhD here. Like I even like I had thought of the topic. I conceptualized the topic right there and then in the project, in the field. And yeah, I spoke to a few people, a few big name brands in the field, and like, the type of work that you want to do is definitely something. So right now I'm working on I'm working in Kubifora in Kenya. So basically the first place where I fell in love with this discipline, with being a plastic geologist. And I'm working on what's called sequence stratigraphy. So I'm trying to recreate the last 2 million years of of the lake level changes, because they have a huge lake called Lake Turkana, and try and attribute to that lake level change. So climate and tectonics, and see how climate and tectonics basically, what the interplay between climate and tectonics is in driving human evolution, and specifically during a time when Homo erectus, which was our direct ancestor, was kind of finding its footing. So kind of basically like unpacking all of this work that's been done for the last 40, 50 years, and using a very specialized tool in geology, which is stratigraphy, which they use a lot of the time for finding oil. So kind of using those methods to kind of really figure out how that could have affected human evolution, and what the interplay and what the nuance is of that. Just so adding like a lot of finer comb detail to all of this work that's been culminating over the past couple of decades.
Wow, that's so interesting. Your journey is so interesting. And the one key thing that keeps on coming up for me is your field has afforded you so many opportunities to travel. Like you here, there, everywhere. It's really exciting that what you do gets you to be in these amazing places. So if somebody had to say, okay, Silindo, you're doing this work for your PhD, but why are you guys bothering to do this? Like, what is the point? Why do we need to understand all of this stuff? So can you give us more on that?
Yeah, it's so interesting, because one of my other hats that I have is I'm also the project manager for the Umsuka Public Paleoanthropology project, which is being funded by National Geographic, and which means what we're trying to do is bring our research to people within the cradle community, but like to every South African. Why must Black people who are trying to achieve economic freedom be interested or care about human evolution? And my most immediate answer is I struggle to find a Black person who is not obsessed with their ancestors. Yeah. And it's so unfortunate that our past is the way it is, that it has now removed us, that our distant ancestors are not something that we care about. We only care about our most recent ancestors. But as soon as you explain to someone, this is what they were doing, this is what Africa innovated and cultivated the human species as we see it today before it gave it to the rest of the world. You see that reconnection that they have with that ancestry, that the sense of where we come from or what we want to do. That sense of purpose really comes back, and but also not only that, the fact that I think it's, for me, it was that it's that instinct, that instinct of like, I want to know where I come from. I want to know what it meant to be in the past. And being a Black person, our narratives of the past have not been about us. And I really think if you're a Black person studying paleoanthropology or archaeology, you are telling your story, your people's story, through your own eyes. And that has not happened ever in the history of research in Africa. And that is a very powerful political statement, I think. And another thing is we're having so many, what's another interesting is that the past in South Africa, since we have such a great record in Africa of the recent past, and just like the past, very like distant past, it's a great opportunity for us to look at the past, see what happens, because the same processes of climate, of catastrophes have happened in the past. So it's a great opportunity for us to look at the past and project what that means, or what the consequences are, instead of waiting for it to happen in the future. One of the things that we're seeing is like a massive spike in CO2 levels in the atmosphere. And we know we have hypothesized what it could mean in terms of like our environment. So we haven't actually lived it. But if you look at about 250 million to 300 million years ago, the exact same process, different ways of it happening, but the exact same things were happening. The largest mass extinction was happening at the time. And we can now look at those ancient environments and see what that meant. I study more recent things where we're having a lot of climate fluctuation. So climate is changing very, very quickly. And we're trying to see what that could mean for our very near future, our very like immediate future with all these climate changes and how we adapted to that. And that's such a beautiful story. The fact that you can learn about your past, but also project the future is very, very, I think it's a very, very useful platform. It is a very insightful and very necessary thing to have.
Definitely. Your past tells you what might happen in the future, and it might also save you a lot of troubles. You kind of prepare possibly for the future. You spoke about how this work is important is because as a Black person in particular, you get to tell your stories of your ancestors. And, it gets me to the point of where the field that you are in is predominantly white, right? So I wanted to ask you, how have you navigated these spaces, number one, and then how has this affected you as a researcher and the type of researcher that you are?
I think I'll relate to almost every Black person in this, who has ever come here, is that our space is very, very white, and it's like damagingly white as well. It's actually traumatic for a lot of people within some disciplines. Yeah. How this whiteness it's so absorbed and so entrenched and so violent in some ways, in so many ways, very triggering, so many microaggressions, that it really either deters people away, so it really, people just don't stay in the discipline long. That's most of what happens. Or people move to other places where they'll make more sense of it. Or people just kind of stop. They are suffocated. They're still within the field, but they don't really produce the data. They're in a very unhappy space. I must say that I think having a good support system within that, and it's not the same for everyone. I have some really ride or die friends. Like I have my girls, we call each other the Black Girls Caucus, all around the country. We always text each other, always check up on each other, all in the same field. We meet up in conferences and things like that, and every chance we have to hang out. Having that support system of people that really loves and supports you and goes the kind of the field, where the field still gives you that sense of like, okay, cool, yeah, you still have a kind of a sense of sanity. I think that's one thing that you can do. Also, just knowing that you're not crazy when you're going through all of these things is such a good, like, that sense of validation. I don't know how Twitter is probably one of the most powerful things I've had within the last, like, I would say 5 years in seeing how you're not insane when someone from across the world is articulating the exact same frustrations you're having in academia as a Black person. It is so good to see that, okay, cool, I'm not crazy. Although they will make you feel like you're crazy or you're overreacting or you're over whatever, you're not. So know that. Oh, that's why that support structure is so important. Knowing that you have these people, and unfortunately, it only came at the end for me. Having be very intentional in the types of people that you let into your circles, into your academic circles. From the time that you choose a supervisor, not imagine. My PhD supervisors are one of the two most wonderful people I have ever met in this whole field, and they're so supportive, and it honestly feels like I speak to colleagues, and they advise me, and they really it's such a conversation. Our interactions are I always feel good and light afterwards, and I always felt like scolded before, when I was having that relationship with my other advisors or when I was in my younger years in the field. So really choosing supervisors that you are in the same personality trait. It's not a luxury for everyone. I had the chance to choose those supervisors that I wanted because I knew one of the biggest sources of anxiety for me in the field is the fact that I need someone that I know that I can have a relationship with. And it's been great, navigating through my PhD. My PhD is the least stressful thing in my life at the moment. Writing my PhD has been a pleasure because of the people that I've surrounded myself with. It's stressful in terms of I don't know what this result is. I don't know what this is. But the actual me producing a PhD out of this is not something I worry about because I've been surrounded with so much good love and support. So even my circles are just great great people, but it's been very intentional. You need to intentionally cultivate your own safe space, and that's just, unfortunately, just one of the things that you have to do as a Black academic, which other white academics don't have to do, because everything is almost like laid out for them in a pipeline, but you don't have that luxury. So you just need to be very intentional about who you let into your space, what you do with those people, what those people mean to you, and how they produce you or make you better, or feed how they feed your that kind of sense of happiness within that space. So it's very being very, very intentional about that kind of stuff is really, really good.
I'm glad that you found your tribe. I'm also learning that it's very important. I mean, I'm at the beginning of my PhD journey, but just in comparison to like my previous years, just knowing that you can go to people and you can say like, this is happening, and you don't feel crazy. Because I think that's always a thing. You always think you are a singular person, but meanwhile, it's actually very normal. And yeah, I will always co-echo supervisors. Supervisors are like, if you can choose your supervisor, I think this is always a point that I always stress. So like, pick people well, pick people well. So that's definitely true. So apart from that, well, maybe linking to that also, you have recently co-founded a podcast as well, and it's called Digging In. Please tell us more about this project and why you actually decided to do that.
So yeah, actually, Digging In has kind of just had this meteoric rise that we're just still overwhelmed by, because we're like, oh, we just wanted to be two friends that talk about stuff that we always talk about and just put it on a podcast. And and that was our like initial intention of doing, just like a space that when we kind of base it off. There's a very popular podcast in America called The Read that my friend Robin and I love, because it's just like, just get us, like same language, same kind. We're just kind of have very similar vibes to each other. So we're like, oh, it'd be nice to have like a read version of paleoanthropology, and we always have these conversations about how we'd want to speak and how we'd want to do everything. But like, we just speak, like we talk for an hour or type for like 2-3 hours of things we feel like this is an important thing that we need to say. Like, this is something that needs to be documented or archived, because this is not, it's important, because, and whenever we meet for workshops, it's one of the things we would say, like, this is what we need to do. This is what, somebody needs to do this. And we're like, why don't we just do it? Like, we just need, internet connection and record over Skype. So that's what we did. Yeah. We put out our first episode as an intro episode. It got incredible reception. We did not expect the reception that it got. We only wanted to kind of curate our experience as South African Black researchers, but we don't have that luxury anymore, even because we're getting so many feedbacks from like American paleoanthropologists and American geoscientists who are like, I love your podcast. It means so much. Like, like literally they are going through the process. They're like, we just, it's like, it's such a great platform, because everyone is like, we're so tired of hearing white men talk about paleoanthropology in their eyes. We have had your perspective for the last year. It's like, yours is so different. And we've got senior academics like, oh my gosh, we really love how you guys approach different topics. It's such a different perspective. It really gives people a chance to kind of face diversity without them wanting to. So just from us having our thoughts, our opinions, because we are just the minority in the field. So it's been a great learning experience, but it's also been so fulfilling, because it means like we can essentially do whatever we want, like in terms of we have some kind of creative leeway. We think of doing programs and that kind of stuff. So we just wanted to know what we just were kind of starting at a pace of we need to just curate some of our thoughts. We think they're important, they're going to be valuable, and to something more intentional. We need to kind of start leading the conversation of what it means to be Black paleo scientists, not only within South Africa, but within the world, So that's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is. We're just kind of just placing our voices there, so that can't say, but it wasn't even there, like y'all didn't even. Yeah, so that's what it is. Like, we're just taking up space, as the kids would say nowadays.
I love it, and congratulations on starting this, and also
Thanks for helping us start. By the way, that was very key advice. You really came through for us.
No, you're absolutely welcome. And I love it. I love to see. I think it's very important that us as Africans, we get, like you said, we get to tell our own story. I mean, America is eating it up, but we are here as Africans and as Black people. We get to tell our stories. And it's really great that you found a niche in your field and you get to tackle those topics, like you said, that it's a very predominantly white field. So it's really good to get the perspectives of other people, and things that everybody else is thinking. So I think that's fantastic work. And I love the fact that you are getting reach. And I think that's a beautiful thing about the internet. It's not only here, you have fans here, there, everywhere. So I'm pretty excited to see where that develops for you, and I wish you guys nothing but the best. And I'll put in the link in the show notes as well, so that people can check it out properly. And you can gain more fans as well. So I think it'll be really cool.
Yeah, and our podcast is not only, by the way, it is mostly geared to paleoanthropologists and paleoscientists, but we discuss because paleoanthropology was at the center of race and racial theory. We have so many topics on those kind of perspectives, and there's so many parallels, just like academia as well. So anything race theory related, you'll probably find it in our podcast. We mentioned it very explicitly, and we explained it very explicitly. Anything that has to do with academia, so almost very similar, as in a similar platform as with you, but a lot more, just two people vibing. We'll add more people at some point, but right now it's about us two. So if you really kind of want to follow our journey and our development and our thought process, because we're very good with saying what's on our minds as well at that very given time. So yeah, I think it's a very cool space,
Okay, great. No, I'm sure people will enjoy it. And just to kind of wrap things off for us here, for somebody who's heard your journey and is inspired to get into this field, let's say STEM overall, but also specifically in your field, despite the number of little or big challenges that are put in this field, what advice would you give to them about surviving and thriving in this field of yours?
I just think that you need to, the one thing is obviously surround yourself with an incredible support system, but also just know that it's probably going to be very hard. Not actually your work, most of us are in this field because we actually love what we do and we're really good at what we do. So that's not even the question of it, but actually navigating through this field is a lot more about navigating people and the system than the actual science. And that's very unfortunate, but that's just how it's set up. Just do what I'm here to do, and just be like, this is not worth it. And you always do cost benefit, but there is nothing as gratifying as when you figure something out in science. There is nothing that will ever feel as good as when you figure something out, either in the field or when you're writing a paper, or when you're doing your lab, when you get your lab results back. So always cling on to that feeling of like why you're doing this, why you love so much with this, and everything else will fall into place. But also another thing is, and I cannot stress this enough, be intentional. Why you want to, where you're going to after this, what's your plan after that, who do you need to meet, what do you need to meet. Be very intentional and be very strategic of which school do you want, why do you want to go to the school, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to be very, very intentional? Don't do it because it's something that's just fallen in your lap. Be very intentional because if you're a Black academic, you are candy and you can be used in a lot of ways that could be very detrimental to your own personal well-being and your own personal perception of the science. So be very, very intentional and be very, very aware how much power you yield and hold, and that will take you very far because you can start using that to negotiate your existence and your space and make yourself a better person and make yourself a happier person within the field.
No, that's that last part, that part. Yeah, that is very, very true. I think sometimes you can get into this and be very naive without knowing like who's pulling the strings and why they're pulling the strings, and then you end up later on you're like, oh snap, I've been played. So I think that's very important advice. And thank you so much for sharing your journey and everything that you do. I had a really great time chatting with you.
I had a great time too. Thanks for inviting me on. It's been like fun. It's great to like hang out and talk to other people in the space. So,
on the other side of the podcast this time.
Yeah. Fun.
Anyway, and to everybody else who's listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Until next time, goodbye.